What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, Week 11 edition. We had some exciting stuff happen last night in that game that we need to talk about. We need to talk about a little bit of the Thursday night game, and then after that, we're straight into Week 11. We got a lot of news and notes to talk about. We got some bold calls. We need another big bold call like last week, and we're going to take a look at JJ's hair. See how it is, because he was really concerned about it pre-show. All that and more on the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. Welcome in, JJ. Your hair, is there like a little piece of hair?
There's just one piece of hair sticking out of my hat right here. You know, I'm just going to exaggerate it even more. There. Now you guys can see it even more.
This is what the podcast listeners miss out on when they're listening to the show in the weekend.
Yeah.
And that is our hair, our fashion choices. We'd like to welcome them, though, everyone into the show. Again, it's an interactive show. We get down and nerdy on this show, so your feedback is appreciated. We have the Patreon, obviously, with the weekly rankings, Q&A, chat on the Discord. We have the survey that we've got a lot of discussion about. We'll probably close that up next week sometime, but we've already got a lot of interesting feedback from the survey that we're planning on taking action on, JJ.
Yeah. Good feedback. We appreciate you guys filling it out. And also, it's important for people to fill it out who kind of consume different types of content with Late Round. I don't expect everybody to consume everything. I know there are some unicorns out there that do, and we love you for it. But, realistically, if you only listen to the podcast sometimes, why only sometimes? Just give us that feedback, and we would love to understand why. So we appreciate those who have submitted that feedback.
Yeah, we actually have a lot more responses than I thought we'd get, because sometimes you send a I'm kind of guilty of not filling out surveys unless I really am interested, because it's fill out this survey for a $25 gift, but it's again, it's stuff that I use, but I'm not invested in. I don't care that much, so maybe that's why we have so many survey responses. All right. Matthew says you guys are looking fresh to death as usual.
I showered literally 10 minutes ago. I got out because I was on the Peloton right before this because I had stuff going on this morning.
Yeah.
So, but I will say my brain is a lot fresher than last week's show. Last week I kind of went into it and I'm like, I don't know if this show is going to be good. I've got some energy today, or at least more energy than last week.
Well, good. We need that energy. Did you have energy last night, JJ?
Well, I think that's a good segue for what we're about to talk about.
It is. Let me get it pulled up. Sorry.
Today's fantasy news.
Wow, what a great segue that was.
Sorry.
What a great transition.
I thought you were going to give me something.
Man, I'll tell you what, people heard the pause on today's mailbag episode, and now people are going to be listening on the podcast feed, and they'll be like, wait, did my podcast feed break? What's going on?
Do people understand? I don't think I understood the pause until I started working here.
Oh yeah, I only do it for mailbag.
The mailbag is when it's something different.
When I kind of mess with people a little bit, because the mailbag's the end of week episode. We're answering some different kind of stuff. It's just kind of the abstract podcast of the week, an episode of the week. Everything else is very formalized and very formatted the same way. The mailbag can go in a lot of different directions. So every week I try to do a little bit something different. We've had an AI voice, we've had my daughter's voice, we've had long pauses, we've had short pauses, we've had whispers. It's fun. It's just a little fun little Easter egg.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about last night then. Take me through the 3 touchdowns by Trayveon Henderson, how you were feeling, And I also want to ask this question, JJ.
Okay.
Have you learned anything? Have you learned anything as an analyst? Or maybe has it reinforced any beliefs that you have had?
So I want to be totally serious with all of this discussion, because I think that the topic of Trayveon Henderson right now is obviously probably the hottest in fantasy football. It's hot off the press too, because of what happened last night.
Yeah.
And I'm just seeing a lot of extreme takes. I see on one end, people are like, oh, the celebrating is going to end next week when Ramondre Stevenson's back and he's taking his old role again. And then there's the other end. It's like, you can't put this back, this genie back in the bottle, because for obvious reasons, right? We're seeing Trayveon do well. I think that what this is, and I've obviously talked about Trayveon this season a lot on the show. And every single time that I've had him on 15 transactions, it's been hold Trayveon Henderson, don't drop him. Like, this isn't a situation where you really want to get rid of a really talented player who, has just not gotten it done yet. Right. But I think every single year there are examples of patience winning in fantasy football. And this is probably going to be the number one example this year, I would imagine. Because even if Ramondre Stevenson comes back and sees, some type of role, Trayveon Henderson's not going to just go away. And the reason I feel optimistic about that is what I talked about on 15 transactions this week. They have the best schedule for running backs in fantasy football rest of season by adjusted fantasy points allowed. Their next two games before their bye, Cincinnati and then the New York Giants, the two best matchups by adjusted fantasy points allowed. And so in those scenarios, you become, even if you get a lower workload, you can become more efficient because the matchups are there, right? And so I also think one of the issues that I'm seeing with the Trayveon Henderson analysis right now is that people are judging his performance by yards per carry. Yards per carry is one of the worst metrics that you could possibly go off of for predictability at the running back position. Now, if you get a large enough number where it normalizes finally, and you can finally, it actually has predictive value, fine. But that's literally typically over multiple a season and a half of data for a higher volume running back. Yards per carry does not really matter that much to me. And I'll be honest with you guys, when it comes to running back play, oftentimes I am going more by the eye test than I am what metrics are saying. Wide receiver, I think you can do a little bit more on the metric side, but running back is so dependent on matchup, offensive line, the type of runs that they're seeing. And obviously this is the same thing for wide receivers and stuff, but you have to, at some point, not rely on something as basic as yards per carry to use to pass judgment on a running back. It's just not the best way to evaluate whether a running back is good or not. So if you look at Trayveon Henderson right now, there are a group of people that are saying, oh, he had a 3-point whatever yards per carry last night, and so therefore, he didn't have a great game. But then you look at more of the detailed metrics. I'll save the eye test, but you look at more of the detailed metrics. He had more yards after contact last night than he had rushing yards. You know what that means? It means he's getting knocked behind the line of scrimmage, and yet he's still gaining rushing yards because he broke more tackles than he's ever broken in a single game. And then you
forced 9 missed tackles on 24 touches.
Right. He had I don't know how you watch that game and you're not like, wow, Trayveon Henderson looked really good. That to me last night was a better game than how he played against Tampa Bay, than any other game that maybe aside from Ramondre against Miami earlier this season, was probably the best running back game that I've seen from a New England Patriots running back. And if you're going to use that kind of argument for Trayveon Henderson, go use the exact same argument for Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson, go right now, look at his, not if you're driving, but go right now and look at Ramondre Stevenson's game logs. Okay. He's had 2 good games this year. Literally. He has not been, you know what? I'm going to pull it up because I think it's an impactful thing to do. If you want to go by game logs, go by game logs. Okay. Ramondre Stevenson, Cleveland, 14 for 34. Then he gets Tennessee, one of the better matchups you can find, 18 for 88 and a touchdown. He had a good game against Tennessee. Then New Orleans, 13 for 18. Buffalo, 7 for 14. He had 2 touchdowns that game, though. Carolina, 9 for 38. Pittsburgh, 4 for 18. Then he gets Miami, I'm going in reverse order. He gets Miami 11 for 54 and Vegas in week 1, 7 for 15. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, you're acting like Ramondre Stevenson has been good this year. This to me is not necessarily like we're you know, when we're looking at this backfield, Henderson has so much more juice, and it's so obvious that he has so much more burst and he brings more to the table for this team. And here's the other thing. We like Henderson's a big play running back. He always was. That's why we like him in fantasy football. He has that ability. He also has good pass catching ability. We saw that with the touchdown last night through the air. But when you have a big play running back like Trayveon Henderson can be, the more reps you get him, the higher chance he's going to break one of those plays, right? And so if you're not giving him at least a decent amount of volume, you're lowering your chances for those literal game-breaking plays. And we can sit here and say the Patriots are going to be stubborn and they're going to go back to Ramondre Stevenson in the exact same role that he had pre-injury. I don't think that's going to happen. Do I think Trayveon Henderson's going to see a 90% snap share each week? No. I think last night's workload probably not going to repeat week in and week out. But what I am saying is I would treat Trayveon Henderson pretty confidently as the 1A in that backfield to Ramondre Stevenson being the 1B. The issue that we're going to run into with Trayveon is potential goal line stuff.
Goal lines, yeah.
And like that kind of upside. So I still think I haven't done like rest of season rankings or anything. I still think he's probably going to be ranked in the RB2 range and not the RB1 range, just because RB1 is like full-blown bell cow. There's a lot of them that like at least like 10 of them that we feel extremely, extremely good about. But to me, the schedule combined with the fact that he is now going to be playing the role that I kind of thought he could play earlier in the season. You know, whenever I said draft Trayveon Henderson, it's just happening 6 weeks later than I expected it to happen. You know, I'm excited about it though. Like he was a good prospect. He's a good player. And here's another underrated part to last night's game, Kitchen. He was really good in pass pro. Like watch that game. He made some really good blocks in pass pro. And that's going to go a really, really long way for him to continue seeing the field down the stretch. You can't like, this is the trajectory that rookies go down. And sometimes you spend a premium pick on them in your fantasy league.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen until later. And then you get jaded and you're upset. And I get it. That kind of thing happens. But this is a trajectory that is not that uncommon for rookies.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it clicks later. They're only human. Sometimes they get more reps and and the coaching staff realizes, oh, we need to get them more reps. Like, I just think that people need to look at this as rationally as possible and ask yourself, is it rational to give Ramondre Stevenson more work, consistently more work, especially back to where they were pre-injury, than Trayveon Henderson, given what we've seen from Henderson? And the other thing, the last thing I want to throw out there is that one of the things I talked about with on the podcast, but also with patrons when I would do the live stream Q&As, you look at his rushing chart via Next Gen Stats, and very frequently earlier in the season, they were using him only up the gut. And that's a recipe for a low yards per carry unless you break one, and he wasn't breaking any of them. And that's not necessarily his game. You want to get him in space. Not only have they gotten him in space a little bit more over the last couple of weeks and getting him to the outside, giving him more tosses, that kind of stuff, but also he's running better between the tackles than he was earlier this season. Like, it's like shocking to me that people can't just accept general improvement. There's going to be more improvement for a rookie running back than there is a veteran running back, just in general. And so I'm at this point where I actually think Ramondre can still be useful in fantasy because of the schedule rest of season. But I don't see this as a situation where things are just going to revert back to exactly as it was before Ramondre Stevenson went down, because that is not a rational thing to do for a team with not just playoff aspirations, Super Bowl aspirations at this point, because they're playing better than almost any other team in football.
Yeah. And when you get this, you also have the, that first overall seed is important.
Yeah. Huge.
And now they've got, they're 9-2 and Colts, Broncos, both 8-2. But yeah, you're fighting for that first. It's like, it's more important than a fantasy playoff bye, because usually two teams get a fantasy playoff bye, but you just have to, you get that off week. This is why I say, like, it's tough to put that toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah. And you also, and I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but I think it's an important thing to just talk about, and people care about it right now. But like, this would just, I would feel a lot differently if Ramondre Stevenson were like really good.
Yeah.
He's not like a really good running back. He's fine. He's not bad.
They did pay him in the offseason.
Yeah. And like, you know, I see people in chat, like Jeff is saying like, so this is what happens with rookies. When is this going to happen with Teteroa McMillan? It doesn't happen with every rookie, you guys.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm trying to say. Like, this is a game of probability, just like, so in your fantasy draft, you take Trayveon Henderson in the 4th round and you're taking him over some other running back or wide receiver or whomever. Right. And those, it's almost like there's this assumption that the other players, the veteran players, that the opportunity cost that you're taking on by drafting that rookie are automatically good, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen a lot of takes like, oh, you don't draft rookies in fantasy because, you know, they get off to slow starts, or you have to wait, or they're not very, you know, whatever the case may be. And that analysis never looks at the alternative, which the alternative is, okay, you're mad that you drafted Travis Hunter over, I don't know, Jerry Jeudy. Like, even though Travis Hunter's out of the,
Calvin Ridley
season, but it's not like these veterans are automatically doing better than what the rookies are. You have to look at hit rates for all, groups of players. And rookies historically, just going back to some of the draft analysis from the draft guide, rookies historically, rookie running backs, they're not amazing bets, but they're pretty good bets. And then rookie wide receivers are really good bets, generally speaking, especially during the second half of the season. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, and Jeff says that he was kidding, but I think that people have that opinion though, right? Yeah. Like, because sure. I've heard it, I hear it all the time. And it's
it's also, like you said, it's the expectation, it's the draft capital. You know, when people spend a 3rd or 4th round pick, they get impatient.
Right.
And so,
and I understand that.
Yeah.
Like, I took an L for Trayveon Henderson earlier.
And this was going to be my question to you is like, did you learn anything from the analyst standpoint of maybe like getting down on yourself too early?
No, because it was an L, right? Like, because you could have bought very, very low on Trayveon Henderson. You know, yeah. I see W's and L's as like, if you have to wait until week 11 or 10, let's say it'd be 10, right? For a true breakout to really happen.
Yeah.
In the best ball streets, it's different because you're not actually like moving players and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I feel good about like how much Trayveon Henderson I have in best ball, because hopefully down the stretch, he's giving us a lot of good performances. And that's when it matters a ton, right? But then, you know, in like a regular season long league, I don't think this is a situation where like it was a bad call for 9 weeks of the season. That's a large chunk of the fantasy season where your 4th round pick is not usable. And so that's on me, right? Like I think framing this kind of stuff, and like, I'm going to do a lot of research this offseason on when this stuff happens, as opposed to looking at the season long points per game stuff and splitting it up in first half, second half, all that kind of stuff. I do think that it's important for me and the way that I communicate these ideas, as well as the listeners, to kind of know, okay, if I get Trayveon Henderson, maybe I should get an Aaron Jones type or something who I know is going to get some production. I mean, obviously he got hurt, but, or Jaylen Warren or something who can give me some early season production of something. And then I can wait a little bit for that Trayveon Henderson thing to hit, because there is going to be a little bit of a ramp up period. It's very rare for these guys to just automatically be an RB1 right away, unless they're, you know, in that Ashton Genty kind of tier.
Yeah. Okay. This is how do you, like, we talked about the Egbuka, like you being high on Egbuka and trying to choose between him, Drake May, and Trayveon Henderson for the fantasy footballers MVP pick.
Yeah.
Knowing how many views, clicks, you know, how much
it's
that
the biggest
comes
show
across.
on the planet. Yeah.
And so this is why I was talking to Peter about this, is like, it's one thing to like be like, not have your pick maybe hit, like being an MVP. It's another thing to have like your pick be a dud, like almost like a league loser. You wasted that draft capital. And I think that's where you were like, please don't let this guy be a dud this year. After
I'll be 5 or
6 weeks. Full
transparency for everybody. I care, and Kitchen knows this after working with me for almost a year now. I care deeply about getting things correct and like being an honest and transparent analyst, but also like being good for you guys. Like, I'm not, I care a lot about that. Like the first few weeks of the season, if you look at like what I talked about in the draft guide and who I kind of liked, if you looked at my rankings and stuff like that, the first few weeks of the season, we had people that were like, why did I draft Drake London, and why, Devontae Smith, and these players who like weren't getting off to hot starts. And it was a little bit stressful for me.
It was very stressful for it. I was about to say, you almost cared too much. Like, the drinks you were drinking weren't tasting as good. The food you were
tougher time.
It was not as sweet. And now it's just like you are walking on a cloud of air because a lot of things have come to fruition and people just have to be patient.
But what I was going to say is that like, I've never had a season where it's been so like, it started off like below average for me the first couple weeks of the season, like, maybe through week 3 or so. And I've never had it flip the way that it's flipped. Like even Jameson Williams is getting better. You know what I mean? Like there's been a lot of that going on, and I'm really happy about it. And so with this Trayveon thing, again, just being transparent, that was kind of like Trayveon's been the last piece to the puzzle for me as an analyst this year, of like how people will look back and view JJ Zachariason as an analyst in 2025. And it feels really, really good. Like as an analyst, to be able to help and to be able to like say that like the process that I've worked on and try to hone in on for so long, it wasn't totally wrong, with this pick. And that to me is really, really important because I like, this is just the truth. I'm an analyst that cares a lot about like guiding you guys in the right direction, but I'm not going to sacrifice my transparency for that, because it's important to also be honest and transparent with how I'm viewing things.
All right. You said we would spend about 10 minutes. I think we actually spent more than 10 minutes on that. It was good. It's good for people to kind of see this, one piece of hair out, and you being very passionate about
look, man, I'm a passionate person in general, but when it comes to this kind of thing where it's my career and it's my job and it's this community and it's all of that, and I know it's at stake and it's just important from that perspective, I care. People are spending their hard-earned money on these leagues, and I don't want them to listen to me and just be like, oh man, I'm never going to this guy again because he's guided me in the wrong direction so long. And look, to be, like I've done this now for 15 years. And so every year that passes and I have more of a backbone, people still come back to me and they're like, oh, well, JJ got me Puka Nacua, so, he's good forever. That kind of stuff is awesome. And I really appreciate that. But I want to always set that standard to be a little bit higher every year. And again, Trayveon Henderson was sort of like that thing hanging over me this season as an analyst. So it's really good to see him really, work out and look good.
Yeah, we're hoping so. We're hoping that the Vrabel and staff are seeing the same things that we're seeing. All right. What the Bucks, whenever I put this on there, we didn't know about Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving. Now we do. They are both out this week, JJ.
Yeah, but I think my response to this is that it's a good sign, right? Like they're
at least practicing.
I think Bucky goes next week. Godwin, they said early December. Maybe they hold him out until after Thanksgiving or something, just because his seems more, he's older and he already re-aggravated it and stuff. So there's a little bit more to that, but I think it's a good sign overall. The other thing too is that Bucky Irving has a monster schedule in a good way down the stretch. If you look at what's going on there. So if you guys are in a league right now, like I had, I have a league where I traded for Bucky yesterday. Actually, I have, because I have so much Henderson, I ended up trading Henderson for Bucky to a team that needed production right now, and I'm locked in for a bye. And I do think that if Bucky comes back, and basically Bucky's sitting on my bench because Rico Dowdle is my RB3. But regardless of all of that, I know, first world problems.
Nice.
Regardless of all of that, I do think that if you're looking at the playoffs right now, and you are in that fortunate position where like you drafted Dowdle or, and he's just kind of sitting there for you as your RB3. Bucky has a really good, like he's a great insurance piece and he has a really good schedule down the stretch. I'd hesitate to really give like a starter for, or, like a full blown, like, great player. I do more of like a 2-for-1 to try to get Bucky right now, just because the schedule is really nice down the stretch.
Okay, is Devontae in Unk mode? He was a limited participant yesterday. We're waiting to see today, but just seeing that tape of him trying to do a juke move and then like
hold his
back freezing up. It was the Leonardo DiCaprio where I'm just pointing at him like, I'm pretty sure I did that earlier this year too.
Yeah, I mean, I've thrown out my back. I've thrown out my back once in my life, and it was from picking up CJ, my son, when he was like 8 months old or something. And I now like anyone who has chronic back pain, I feel so bad for you. I couldn't get off the couch for like 24 hours.
Debilitates you, man.
Yeah, it really screws you up.
That's why I got to get a new desk chair.
Yeah. I feel a lot. My posture is a lot better now.
How is your do you like it? We haven't really talked about it.
Yeah, I love the new desk chair. It's great.
Does it have your custom butt imprint like it used to have?
Yeah, it's not there yet. It'll be there though. It'll be there. I mean, look, I feel like my posture is a little bit better. I'm feeling a little bit more, energized.
The most uncomfortable desk chair I've ever sat in, just because it was your butt.
Yeah,
and it was
old. It's like 9 years old too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not worried about Devontae right now. I mean, honestly, if you want to be worried about Rams wide receivers, it would probably be the 13 personnel usage that they've had over the last handful of weeks, and the fact
just
that
spreading out all their tight ends everywhere.
Yeah, and Puka Nacua has like a 60 to 70% route share. Like he's not out there very frequently. With that being said, I do think that people aren't necessarily adjusting that enough for game scripts, because they've had some insane game scripts over the last few weeks. And obviously when you're in a positive game script and you're running down clock and whatnot, you're going to have heavier personnel. I think it's working and they'll probably use it more, but it's such an efficient offense that I'm not like overly concerned about their stud wide receivers.
Okay, the Niners offense, pretty good. With Brock Purdy set to start this week, JJ.
Yeah, I'm just putting bye next to this one because the 49ers schedule, I talked about this
B-U-Y for the podcast listeners.
Yeah, not B-Y-E. Yes, yeah. Good call.
Thank you.
But the 49ers schedule rest of season, I'm just going to read it to you guys. Arizona, then Carolina, then they get Cleveland. But in the fantasy playoff, then they have a bye, I think, after that. And then the fantasy playoffs, though, Tennessee, Indianapolis, and Chicago. I mean, I don't think you can name a better stretch of 3 games for both passing and rushing attacks than that in the fantasy playoffs. So, and not only that, but the Colts game is in Indianapolis, so it's in a dome. The other games are at home. So I'm pretty optimistic about the 49ers offense. Now, with that being said, the pass catchers, we could see a scenario and situation where it's a little bit of a roller coaster, because obviously not all these guys can just be fed and just eat from a fantasy perspective week in and week out, with Ricky Pearsall now looking to be back. Yeah. So I do think we might get a little bit more variation from that, but it's not like Juwan Jennings has had like a decent enough floor, but I think the ceiling, the odd part with like Pearsall coming back is that I think the ceiling with Jennings could be higher, even though the floor might be a little bit lower, just because you'll get softer coverage. He's not going to be as reliant as the one. And so I think all these guys could eat in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah. Let's hope so. All right. Harvey season. Harvey's made a few cameos this week. J.K. Dobbins. I'm just assuming he's going to be out this week.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all were kind of waiting for like a Dobbins injury, but the crazy thing is that this was on a hip drop tackle, and it's like it wasn't even like J.K. Dobbins' fault, really. Right. I'm not that other injuries are their faults. I'm just saying this is not like an injury prone thing. This is just he got really unlucky kind of thing. But yeah,
injury shaming, JJ.
What's that?
Is your injury shaming?
Yeah, right. Now I'm going to be canceled. But yeah, look, I love J.K. Dobbins. He was someone that, and I said this in the Discord too earlier this week. It's like you definitely need to split up your fantasy season almost by quarters and think about like, okay, what can I get? And maybe like for instance, I have a lot of teams that have J.K. Dobbins and Trayveon Henderson, right? And that's the kind of pairing I was talking about earlier, where we kind of knew Dobbins would get some work early on in the season. I think it extended longer than I expected, but regardless, like, he was getting work earlier on the season. That was one of the reasons why, like, I had him as a target in the draft guide this year. And then, once things kind of naturally slow down, whether RJ Harvey gets more work or, the inevitable injury happens, then you kind of flip the switch and hope that the other guy that you drafted him with is performing well. So if you do have that duo, then that's perfect, because it's great. But with that being said, I talked a lot about RJ Harvey on the podcast today on the mailbag. Michael Florio and I, Michael F. Florio and I had a good conversation about Harvey on perspective. So you guys can get a lot of takes from those two shows.
Yeah. Cover boy, RJ Harvey. All right. Crabs for everyone. Everyone gets crabs. Hopefully With the Giants this week, set to start Jameis Winston. Darius Slayton, though, out. I thought he played really well last week. It would have been fun to see him.
Is he officially out?
He is officially out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is I'll say this. It helps Wandale from the perspective, and I said this on the Sleeper Show. Slayton being out will help Wandale because Wandale won't be as locked into the slot. He'll play. Wandale's going to run 97% of the routes for the Giants this week because that's what they do when Darius Slayton's out. They'll use Wandale Robinson on the perimeter, and the Packers are worse against perimeter wide receivers than they are slot receivers. So I was actually leaning like if Slayton were 100%, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he outperformed Wandale Robinson this week. Yeah. But now Wandale gets a better floor ceiling combo, not just because Slayton's out, but actually because of deployment, because I think Wandale now will see more perimeter work and maybe be just more of like a 50% slot guy instead of like a 70% slot guy.
Dalton Kincaid also out. Frowny face.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna say it's Dawson Knox season. One player that I definitely had. I'm a lot higher on than the market this week, just because last time we saw him, 77% route share. They played Atlanta. Atlanta's a tough matchup. This isn't a great matchup to be fair, but I do think that like if you're desperate, you could go with Dawson Knox this week.
Yeah, or just look for. Can mention it in the newsletter, but there are some deep sleepers at tight end this week as well. There's one team that plays a team that has been really bad against tight ends. All right, Wilson or Dortch with MHJ being out. Good call by you for saying that he was a sell on the transactions this week.
Yeah, I told people in Discord that I talked to Marvin Harrison Jr.'s appendix on Monday when I was doing research for the 15 transaction show. So I kind of had insider info that the appendix was going to burst, and that's why I had Marvin Harrison Jr. as a sell. Yeah. Just
you better say JK. You better do something.
Bro, I mean, look. I already have my appendix removed, so.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I know what he's going through right now. It's not that fun. It's not very fun. Yeah, I had one of the most embarrassing stories of my life after my appendix was removed. Do you want to hear it?
Are you going to share that, or is that for like a Discord only, or what?
No, I'll share it. I don't care.
Yeah.
So I was in the hospital post appendix, and I was back in Pittsburgh at home because I was still in college. And someone from my high school, this girl, caught wind, and that I'm friends with, caught wind that I was in the hospital.
How old were you?
20 maybe. I was dating my wife. I was dating Amanda. So like we were, so like she knew who this girl was. They were friends in high school. And this girl came and visited me in the hospital. I'll never forget this. Well, after you get your appendix removed, you are bedridden for like a day or whatever, 2 days. And they give you a jug to pee in. Okay. And so I took the jug and I'm like, oh, I got to go pee. So I start peeing in the jug. As I'm peeing in the jug, underneath my blanket, of course, in walks my friend from high school. And she's standing there and I'm just peeing in this. And like, I finish like right as she walks in. And then we start talking and I didn't want to make it awkward. So I just kind of left it underneath the blanket. But then we ended up talking for like 45 minutes. And so it got to a point where I don't even know if I could like hold the bottle underneath me anymore. And so eventually I'm just like, you know what? I got to bite the bullet here. And I pulled it out from underneath the blanket. I looked at it. I looked at her and I just said, yeah. And then I set it down on the nightstand that was next to me. And then we continued on. Like, she's awesome. And so it was not a big deal, but it was very embarrassing in hindsight.
The fact that you still remember that.
Yeah. I mean, my gosh, I remember awkward interactions for like that most people just brush off. I'll think about it for like 4 weeks. That thing I'm going to remember for life, you know?
So, speaking of P Jug, for Wilson or Dortch this week?
I'm going to say that Dortch has the matchup, but Wilson's the better play probably. The other thing too is that Michael Wilson next week has a really good matchup. I think they play Jacksonville. I have it in the look ahead waiver wire stuff. And so that's a really good matchup for perimeter guys. And there's a chance that Marvin Harrison Jr. is not back next week. And so I think Wilson's probably the one that because like, let's just say that we like Dortch a little bit more than Wilson, even though I don't necessarily, but let's just say that would be the case. If you want to look ahead a little bit and think further, then you might just want to have Wilson and play him as opposed to playing what might be a very micro edge anyway.
How long is he going to be out with this? I know that we don't have any official news, but since you had yours out, like, what would you estimate?
He could be back next week.
No way.
Yeah. Ben Roethlisberger, I remember had it done, and he was only out a week, I think.
No chance. That was back then.
Yeah, that's true. Different times. I don't know. I remember I had just started an internship like a week later, downtown Pittsburgh, and I was taking the bus from where I lived in Pittsburgh to because I was living in on Pitt's campus, and I remember carrying my laptop bag because they gave me a laptop, and it just it hurt just walking to the bus stop because you have incision and stuff like that. They do it laparoscopically though. They just pull it out.
Imagine people tackling you.
Yeah, I mean, look, they just pull that thing out of your belly button and you're good to go.
Oh gosh,
that's what they do.
All right. Speaking of not medical advice, Joe Burrow, they've opened the window for Joe to come back, and I was getting excited. I honestly, the rival in my home league had already dropped him, so I spent $1 more than my rival had, and it's a super flex league.
Yeah,
just because the thought of winning our league with the guy that he had dropped was just too good. I couldn't let that pass. And then I see a gentleman in the Discord, Sir Dave, and he's saying that he's not sold right now on this.
That Burrow's going to be able to come back.
Yeah, he thinks it's more they're almost, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but almost like they're trying to appease Joe Burrow, that he thinks this is not like a situation where Burrow's going to come back 100%.
Yeah, I think right now they have like a 13 to like a 10% chance to make the playoffs or something like that based on where they're at. And so but what that means is that Joe Flacco needs to lead them, and they need to win. Like they have to win in Pittsburgh. Right. They have to.
It means those two just blow ups, meltdowns in their past two games.
They're huge.
Important.
Yeah, huge. And so I do think that that's going to dictate when we see Burrow. But look, man, like when people, in my opinion, overstate like the sitting players based on injury stuff, unless it's like I was a little bit nervous about like Garrett Wilson because they're not going to play now that he is injured. Yeah, they're not going to want to play him until he's 100%, which is I think why they put him on IR, because they're thinking long term with a guy like Wilson. Yeah, and so with Burrow, if they're in it, they'll play him, and if he's ready, and that's the way that like these guys, this is their job. This is what they do for a living, And so if they feel good, they feel good. They're not just going to hold him out just to hold him out. So we'll see. It sounds like Schefter said week 14. And so I think he's a stash just as a, related to that, because he should be able to give us QB1 production when he's back.
Yeah, you mentioned Garrett Wilson. I saw the alert to come out while we're on the show that they are planning on him playing again this season. Yeah. I don't know your thoughts on AD Mitchell, though. I saw in the live game banter, people were kind of down on him, but I think it was Mike Renner and somebody else that were saying that he actually had some pretty good routes last night. He's
a good separator. Yeah. AD Mitchell, like I didn't really like him as a prospect, but he's a really good separator. He can get down the field. He just never finishes catches like that. Like what we saw last night.
Kind of important.
Yeah. What we saw last night was the most AD Mitchell like performance of all time. Yeah. He can get separation. He can get open. And then whether it's drops or whether it's just like not using his body properly in these contested catch situations, for whatever reason, he just doesn't come down with the ball. So I think that he's at least an interesting flyer in deep leagues. Yeah. But nothing more than that. Just because, that offense is giving us like 120 passing yards a game. It's really hard to buy into that.
So bad. But good for Mechie for catching a touchdown. That's a guy you
got to root for John Mechie.
Yeah, in life. Yeah. All right. QJ stands for questionable Johnston. We have, I just traded for QJ, so I kind of need him to play this week.
Yeah, I like the matchup this week. So
Gadsden is playing. He's off the injury report. So
I think Gadsden, though, Keenan Allen has kind of disappeared over the last few weeks. And so I'm a little bit concerned more about him with Gadsden. QJ just has a really good matchup on the outside for LA this week. I think that we're back to sort of like just we knew this since like week 4, but QJ is more of a roller coaster guy. McConkey's the solid, you can start him each week, feel good about it. And then Keenan Allen's kind of taking a back seat and is not as important to the offense as like an Oronde Gadsden is at this point.
Yeah. Remember how people were panicking about Ladd McConkey?
I do. This is exactly why it's just like, even a 4-5 game sample, it's still pretty small. We can't just totally overreact to that kind of stuff.
All right. We covered a lot of news. So we got to get on to some, get down and nerdy with some today's data.
Today's data.
All right. So for today's data, I thought it'd be fun to look at players and the percent of points coming from touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's that?
A blast. Not
It's
just
so
fun. Yeah.
Really fun. So I have this chart here, and the top players, the top 15 players, and this is pre-Thursday Night Football. These are the guys who have seen the highest percentage of their points coming from touchdowns. So Dallas Goedert is first in the league with 38% of his fantasy points. This is PPR leagues coming from touchdowns. Josh Jacobs is second, Jonathan Taylor third, Devontae Adams and Javonte Williams. Those are the top 5. And then you can look at the bottom 15 and you can see that Mr. Zay Flowers is at the bottom of the list, where only 5% of his points per game production is coming via touchdowns. And I talked about Zay on the 10 Trends episode this week and talked about how this is what we get with him because this is how they deploy him. He doesn't see as many end zone targets. I am interested though. Rashad Bateman doesn't sound good for this weekend. I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but they will use Bateman, a little bit more in the red zone. And maybe that switches a little bit more to Zay Flowers here in week number 11. And we finally see the first touchdown for Zay since week number 1. But, Zay's great. I think he's a good player. He just doesn't have the ceiling that we love in fantasy football.
Bateman did not practice and is likely out.
Yeah. So maybe we see maybe that should have been the bold call, is that Zay Flowers scores for the first time since week 1.
There you go. Save it for the bonus bold call, please.
Okay.
The late round main event.
Okay, let's get to some players that JJ likes more than consensus this week. Big surprise here. Homer JJ. This is like me putting a Calvin Ridley bounces back bold call.
Pittsburgh guy talking about Aaron Rodgers because I'm the biggest Steelers fan on earth, as everyone knows. I have Rodgers 2 spots ahead of consensus right now. 27.25 implied team total for Pittsburgh, which is extremely high. Second best matchup for quarterbacks by adjusted points allowed. The Bengals have allowed 49.3 adjusted passing yards over expected to quarterbacks this year. And then the Steelers, as we know, are very heavy tight end focused. They have the second highest tight end target share in football behind only Arizona, and Arizona has Trey McBride, and Pittsburgh definitely does not have a Trey McBride. And the Bengals are terrible against tight ends. So I think there's a tight end matchup they can exploit, as we saw the last time these guys played, I think back in week 7. So Aaron Rodgers, I think, is a QB1 this week.
Okay. Aaron Jones.
I can't quit Aaron Jones right now. Like, I just feel like he's just criminally underrated. Like, I don't think people still realize that he's just the bell cow again in Minnesota. They have a 25.5 point implied team total. They're playing in a dome. They're at home this week. Chicago is the 8th best matchup for running backs by adjusted points allowed. They're allowing 13 rushing yards to running backs per game over expected. Last week, he had a 69% running back rush share. He had about a 15% target share. I mean, Aaron Jones was like that kind of usage, okay, layered on top of a 25.5 point implied team total in a dome against a good matchup in the Bears. I don't know why we wouldn't be relatively bullish on Aaron Jones this week. If he, just assuming that he gets the same usage.
Yeah. Assuming that Jordan Mason's no longer a thing, basically.
I mean, he's maxed out at 8.5 PPR points in a game with Aaron Jones this year. So
tough scene. All right. Wide receiver, Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know that Denver is a bottom 5 matchups for wide receivers. And so people might be a little bit hesitant to be like really bullish. Not that you're benching Rice. I mean, you're going to play Rice no matter what. But Kansas City still has an implied team total over 24 points. He's had a 27% target share since he returned. And Denver actually ranks 3rd in adjusted target share allowed to wide receivers. So when teams face Denver, they are actually targeting their wide receivers, and they still don't have Patrick Surtain. So I think Rice is an elite play still, regardless of this matchup.
Okay, for tight end, you've got Colston Loveland. He was dropped in the expert league that I'm in, and Ben Gretsch picked him this morning. I'm kind of upset at him.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that you should. Again, this is partially like projection based. Luther Burden, I feel the same way. It's like he's going to get an opportunity eventually. Olamide Zacchaeus has not been it, and DJ Moore is a little bit banged up. And I would argue that Luther Burden could have more upside than DJ Moore because Moore has not been the DJ Moore from a couple years ago, let's say. I'm looking at Colston Loveland and I'm saying, okay, at tight end, every tight end after like tight end 1 territory, like low end tight end 1 territory, has a floor of 0. Like they could easily just get out, like give us a 0 in fantasy football. But Loveland's been so efficient over the last couple of weeks. And to me, when I watch the Bears, he looks the part. Like, I don't think it's a hot take to think that long-term, there's still a chance, a very decent chance, that Colston Loveland is just a better player than like Tyler Warren from the same draft class. Like, I know Tyler Warren's in the better situation right now and he works with that offense and what they need and want, but Loveland is a lot younger. He was just as good of a prospect coming out. I think it's very easy to like lose sight of that as we're not getting like amazing production from Loveland. But yeah, and yes, he did see a 56% route share last week with Cole Kmet back when it was like 77% and 78% the 2 weeks prior. But he's just been over the last 2 games, 11 targets, 10 catches, 173 yards. The Bears need to win these games, and they face a Minnesota team that has been second in adjusted target share allowed to tight ends. So do I think he could be like, a 3-point player? Yeah, but I think anyone in that range could be a 3-point player. So I'm going to just go with the upside and say, what if they use him more? What if this is a decently high scoring game in this dome environment? And what if Colston Loveland is just really, really good? And I think he's more talented than the other high-end tight end 2s that are out there. Mid-range tight end 2s, which is where people are ranking him right now. I'm just going to lean into the talent profile and go with Loveland.
Okay. Speaking of leaning into things, leaning into these bold calls. Last week, we had Kyle Williams' breakout performance.
I mean, look, he got the one. He got the one. Okay. I'm taking it.
We got that one that when he, like, I was about to take off the pants, just as like pants off, 74-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And then that was it. But maybe we get
never to be heard from again. What's funny is in my home league, I used Kyle Williams and I won by like half a point. And it was basically because I just, used a waiver wire player in Williams and beat him. And then everyone was giving me crap after last night because Williams did absolutely nothing. And I go,
you got lucky.
No, but I said, come on, guys, aren't you listening to my podcast? Last week I had Kyle Williams as a sleeper. This week it was Mac Hollins, and Mac Hollins had a decent game last night. Yeah. So why aren't you supporting your friend and listening to his podcast?
I bet they love it when you do that.
Oh yeah, they love talking junk to me. Yes,
and they love when you tell them like, didn't you guys hear my podcast? Didn't you hear how I was right about these players? I bet.
Well, then they'll just say, no, I was listening to the footballers or something like that. That's like
kind of a low blow.
Yeah.
All right. This guy, your bold prediction, he was also a player to target.
Earlier this season. This one's been mostly an L this season.
The draft guide.
Yeah.
But this is also why food's tasting a little bit sweeter to you. It's Jameson Williams is a top 12 wide receiver this week.
Yeah, I like JMO this season entering it, and didn't work out the first mostly 4 or 5 weeks this season. He's been a little bit better though of late. And then we saw Dan Campbell take over last week. And when they've been targeting Jameson Williams, I talked about this on the 10 Trends episode. When they've been targeting him, this is the difference between early season JMO and current season JMO. Is they're targeting him on easier routes, like shorter routes and not just go routes and not just down the field targets. There were games earlier this year where Jameson Williams had ADOTs of like 22 yards, which is absurd. Like if you don't convert on one of those, you're toast in fantasy, right? But now you're getting more of these crossers and, Jared Goff is even talking him up and how he's a cheat code on those kinds of routes. And so I think they're in a position right now, especially with Dan Campbell calling plays where they had a pass rate over expected that was in the green, I think for the first time this year with Dan Campbell last week calling plays. Yeah. And so that I feel optimistic about that. Now they get Philly. I wish it was indoor. I wish it was in Detroit. That would make me feel really good about this prediction.
Last outdoor game for them.
Yeah, last one in the fantasy season.
Right.
And so they get Philly. they've been worse against perimeter guys than slot guys. They've actually been pretty average against perimeter wide receivers in terms of fantasy points allowed per game. Sam Laporta is banged up. We don't know if he's going to go or not.
He has missed 3 practices this week.
Yeah. So like if he's banged up or out, out, then obviously more targets will be funneled to JMO. But even if he's banged up a little bit, there's more upside for JMO. And like I said, he's just getting a little bit more involved in the offense. So I'll say JMO, a top 12 wide receiver this week.
And shout out to Dan Campbell, because I think people just think he is this Neanderthal who just runs through a brick wall with his head first.
Campbell. Oh my gosh, I love Dan Campbell.
He is I don't know, he's just sharper than people think, I feel like.
No, I agree. He's a very, very, very good head coach, and he knows the game really well. But yeah, I'm like I said, I wish this game was indoors, but I think it still has a chance to be relatively high scoring. And I want to give Dan Campbell credit too, that this is another thing. Like when you look at what's going on with Philly and the offense, and they're like, and I've seen people who are like, oh, they don't need to target AJ Brown anymore because they're winning. And it's like, no, you need to still improve to sustainably win. Just because you win games doesn't mean you can't get better. And Detroit was in a similar position, but Dan Campbell said, you know what, I'm going to take this over and see how things go. And in my opinion, their offense was unstoppable last week. It's a good matchup, but they were still unstoppable.
Okay. This next one on the outside, it certainly seems like pretty bold. Trey Tucker, top 20 wide receiver, but people have to realize, I guess, who they're playing.
Yeah, they're playing Dallas this week. Trey Tucker's only had one game this high all season. And it was that one, I think, against the Commanders earlier this year.
He had 40.
Yeah, he had like 40 PPR points. But he's running routes on 100% of their dropbacks the last couple of weeks. Like he's going to be out there running routes, and he runs perimeter routes. And Dallas is so horrifically bad against outside wide receivers. They've given up the most points to perimeter receivers in the game. They've given up the most adjusted fantasy points to wide receivers in general. So I'll say Trey Tucker maybe I should have said top 24 or something, but we'll say top 20 for Trey Tucker this week.
Okay. Antonio says Kitchen missed out on naming Kincaid as Ken First Aid. I had aid in my brain and I was like, how can we do? And I missed it. I completely missed this. Antonio, you are absolutely right.
Bigger L than JMO as a draft guide target, I would say.
Jeff says, a lifelong, long-suffering Lions fan, we love Campbell. That's how I also felt as a long-suffering Titans fan
with Mike Vrabel.
With Vrabel, and then didn't happen. So
yeah, he's doing an okay job in New England.
Doing all right, some might say. Let's get to the look ahead waiver wire. You've got Jacoby Brissett as number 1, and your look ahead waiver wire for next week. Again, this is not week 11. This is week 12.
To be fair. Yeah, I'm just separating by position. There's no like ranking here.
Okay. But also to be fair, I don't think, or maybe it's week 13. Week 12 are there buys? And week 13 there's not?
Yeah, Thanksgiving there's not.
Yeah, week 13 there's not. Week 12 there is. Week 14 there. Okay, go ahead.
So Jacoby Brissett gets Jacksonville next week. Have him on your radar. Moving on to running back. Tajay Spears, he's still out there in over 60% of leagues. They're going to see a lot of negative game scripts. They use Spears in those environments. Chris Rodriguez gets a bye next week, but what if they do use him as like their very clear number 1, which I kind of expect to happen.
Yeah.
Taj Brooks, kind of an interesting one if you're in a deep league, like very deep league, because Samaje Perine's out. And what if, there's an injury to Chase Brown, or what if they just use Brooks a little bit more than we expect? I wouldn't really expect that happening, but this is just a what if kind of scenario. I just have a note on here to get handcuffs. So Blake Corum, Tyler Algier, those kinds of players.
Brian Robinson would be a guy who I think is available in a lot of leagues that could be a potential good handcuff.
Yeah, Brian Robinson is another. You're
kind of acting like it's just like a regular name, but I think he has like serious potential.
Well, of course, yes, he's one of the better handcuffs.
Thank you. That is what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, no, Brian Robinson is up there with like one of the more decent handcuffs. He just doesn't catch a lot of passes. He's not going to be CMC if he were to step in.
Right.
Jaden Reed, I talked about on the mailbag this week. Someone asked like what his ceiling looks like if he were to come back. And I answered that honestly. I don't think that he has like a top 20 ceiling, even though he could in another environment, but good rest of season schedule for Green Bay. Michael Wilson, like I said, they get Jacksonville next week. That's a good perimeter matchup. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. There were some good D'Amico Ryans sound bites this week about their rookies, even though they continue to not use those rookies despite them knowing that. Like, get this Xavier Hutchinson stuff out of here. It's just, come on, guys. This is just ridiculous. Like, Jalen Noel, low key, Jalen Noel could realistically be like the next like slot superstar.
Yeah.
Like, he has that in him. Like, I mean, I loved him as a prospect, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but he's looked so good when he's been out on the field.
Even more so for a look at waiver wire because they play the Titans this week. So if one of them pops off this week, you're going to spend a ton of them next week on the waiver wire.
Right. Yeah. There's also Luther Burden. I think that there's a chance that there's an uptick in usage this week because that's what rational coaching says.
Yes, please.
And he's still rostered in fewer than 10% of leagues. They get Pittsburgh next week. Josh Palmer is going to be back, it sounds like. And the Bills really need another a real down the field threat and someone that could be.
They got Keon.
Yeah. There you go. He's been great.
He was not bad last week.
Yeah, for the first time since week 1.
Okay. Well, week 1 he was pretty good too.
Josh Palmer, I think, could be on your radar in deeper leagues, and just to see like what the deployment looks like, because I do think they need a little bit more consistent. I mean, I know they need more consistency from their wide receivers. Brenton Strange should be back, and so that's a tight end to keep in mind. I don't know if we're going to see like massive target shares for him, but definitely a tight end to have in your back pocket. And then at defense, Cleveland is rostered in about half of leagues. They get Vegas next week. Atlanta, they have a stretch run where they get pretty good matchups. They get New Orleans next week. You can use them this week too. And then San Francisco gets Carolina. Carolina, one of the better matchups for fantasy defenses.
There you go. I've actually got a good idea for the Bills in the offseason, and that is to find like a true wide receiver 1. I don't know if they've thought about this.
I mean, fans, I know Bills fans have been saying they need to do something for literal years at this point.
Yeah. It's kind of like
Keon Coleman was a questionable draft pick. He was a questionable prospect. So they need to really invest.
The Packers never drafting a receiver in the first round. And then this past is like, now they got Golden.
Yeah. But Golden was always more of like complimentary. Not full blown alpha,
But we did not expect Christian Watson to come back and be this guy that he is now.
Yeah.
I think he's actually on the injury report, but I think we're expecting him to play. But yeah, Bills, just go ahead and get a stud wide receiver so we can have some fun with Josh Allen. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's wrap this thing up. We've got the quad box to talk about. JJ, I'm just going to tell you that the Dolphins play at home this week, but it's in Spain.
Yeah.
And it's in Madrid. So not quite the home matchup that you think they might have.
Yeah. I'm sure at some point on the show I said it's in Miami, and I haven't heard about it.
Last week, the game in Germany, it was kind of a dud. Did you think it was a dud? Except if you had Jonathan Taylor. If you had Jonathan Taylor, then it was fine.
Drake London was good. It was a good game. Alec Pierce balled out. He was a sleeper. If you needed Bijan
Robinson, though, in your home league, it was a dud.
So it was a dud for you.
Yes.
I thought it was a great game. It went to OT. It was fine. Yeah. All right, you go first. You go first this week for the quad box.
All right, I'm going to go first, and I'm going to actually go. Boy, that Texans-Titans total is pretty high up there, but I'm going to go Bears-Vikings.
Okay. I'm going to go Bengals-Steelers for mine because the last time
surprise.
The last time they faced off, the there was fantasy fireworks.
Surprise, surprise.
I'm really excited for that game.
Okay. In a real life game, this Chiefs Broncos game would be pretty fun. It is crazy how low scoring they think this Cowboys Raiders game is going to be. So let's go with Brock Purdy coming back in this 49ers Cardinals game.
I really want to do Buccaneers Bills, but I think that
I almost did that.
It has a chance to just be more boring than we expect.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Because the Bucs have not.
Oh, no, I'm changing mine. Sorry. I'm changing it.
I was going to go to that.
No, sorry. This is mine. Seahawks Rams shootout. Let everybody let everybody play full throttle.
Okay. All right. Then I'll go 49ers Cardinals because of Purdy being back.
Oh, where do you get your ideas?
I think you could go though. I think you could easily go Bucks, Bills, the Lions, Eagles. That's a Sunday night football game too. Yeah.
Lions and Eagles will be fun if the Lions get out to an early lead.
Is that really the total for the Cowboys?
I think so.
I feel like it's 50.5.
So maybe I bet I got my copy and paste messed up.
Yeah, I'm like, there's no way that's 41.5. Zero chance. Every Cowboys game is like well over 50 points.
Yeah. Does that? Well, don't let the total.
It doesn't change. I mean, it doesn't change who I want to watch because.
Yeah, don't let the total pick who you want, JJ. Just go by who you want to watch. I do think though, if we get some like shootout games, like Seahawks only dropping back 11 times last week. You had in the trends, the data dump.
Yeah, and then even the Jets got off to a lead because of like defense and special teams and stuff, and so they only threw it 11 times. I think the Seahawks had 13 dropbacks.
Yeah, so we need that game to just to open up so that JSN can get all the love that
he deserves.
We
want to see a little Rashid Shaheed.
Yes. Yes. Maybe some Torrey Horton. Coming back.
He's banged up. Yeah.
Coming back though. On the opposite side, not just Adams, not just Puka, they got a tight end,
Terrence Ferguson, T-Ferg,
who I know they're spreading out targets among those three, but they're talking about like it's coach speak. Hey, crazy not to get this guy more involved.
Yeah.
So yes, you would be. All right, JJ, you have any final thoughts about this week?
I don't. Like I said, excited about Trayveon Henderson. Hopefully you guys have a clear picture where my head's at after the 20-minute discussion about him earlier.
The passionate, you know what?
Like, I'd love to hear feedback in the comments on this show on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever about how you felt about me breaking down the Trayveon stuff in that way. If you like that kind of deep dive, or if you just want us to move on and talk about more news items.
Yeah. And I will just say, again, we have this survey that you can fill out. And there was one response that said the new guy is kind of stiff. No offense to the new guy if he's reading this. And I don't know your email, but that guy, I want to say, I heard your feedback, and I will try not to be as stiff.
Yeah, he hasn't been as stiff today.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, on behalf of JJ, I'm David, and we appreciate you all. Everyone, go check out the Perspective show with Michael F. Florio. I had the same question that you did, JJ, so I'm glad that you just opened it up.
Got right to it.
Opened it up with the name. We also got the mailbag. I thought you had a really good question especially for the noobs who have not been basically like always listening to the show. I thought that can actually be an evergreen show. We should probably talk about that this morning.
Yeah, the adjusted point stuff, like what adjusted
points
means.
Yeah, points again. So, and then also we have the Patreon that we have. So, love you guys. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time here on the Late Round Fantasy Football Show.